started with the screams. Not from above the water, but from beneath it. The night was calm, the moon floating like a pale ghost above Lake Lanier. The surface looked peaceful, almost too peaceful, like glass waiting to break. But under that still surface something moved. It whispered. It called out names. And then, it screamed. Kayla and her friends had come to the lake for a night swim. Locals had warned them, don't go near Lake Lanier after dark. It's cursed. But they laughed it off. To them the lake was just water, nothing more. They didn't know the stories were true. As Kayla dove in, the water wrapped around her like cold hands. It felt heavier than normal water, thick, almost alive. She kicked her legs and popped up to the surface, gasping. Her friends cheered from the dock. But when she tried to swim back, she couldn't. It was like something below had grabbed her ankle. Guys, I can't move, she shouted, splashing. At first they thought she was joking. Then she screamed again, louder, sharper, filled with real terror. Her hand shot up out of the water, clawing at the air. Suddenly bubbles burst on the surface. A dark shadow moved under her, too large to be a fish, too slow to be human. Her friends ran to the edge, yelling her name. One of them jumped in, but the moment he did, he too felt the pull, the same invisible grip dragging him down. Help! It's pulling us, he yelled before being yanked under. The water rippled once, then went still. Only the moon remained, staring down like an unblinking eye. Minutes passed. Then, faintly, voices rose from below, whispers bubbling up through the water. Kayla, help us, join us. The others screamed and ran. But before leaving, one of them swore he saw a pale face just under the surface. Eyes open. Mouth moving. Kayla's face. And then, nothing but silence. Cliffhanger moment. Fade to story build up. Years before that terrible night, before Lake Lanier even existed, there was a town. A small, lively place called Oscarville. It was full of farmers, families, and church bells that rang every Sunday morning. Then one day the government decided to flood it, to build a lake for power and recreation. People were forced to leave their homes. Graves were dug up, but some were left behind. Whole cemeteries sank under the water. Houses, barns, schools, all swallowed by the rising tide. Many believed the souls of those left behind never rested. They said the lake was built over bones and memories that refused to drown. Not long after the flooding, strange things started happening. Fishermen heard crying from the deep. Boaters saw lights moving under the water at night, like lanterns drifting beneath the waves. Swimmers felt cold fingers brush against their legs. Locals began whispering, Lake Lanier is haunted. By the 2000s, hundreds had drowned there, so many that people stopped counting. But every year new visitors came, and every year, someone else didn't return. The locals said the lake took whoever ignored the warnings. It wasn't just accidents. It was revenge. Fast forward to the summer when Kayla and her friends arrived. They had read about the curse but didn't believe in ghosts. They just wanted fun. Kayla loved mysteries, and she had heard about the sunken town beneath the lake. She thought exploring it at night would make a great story for her vlog. Before the trip, an old gas station owner warned her, "That lake don't sleep, missy. It remembers." She laughed, brushing him off. But his last words stayed in her head. When you hear the voices, don't answer them. She didn't know what he meant, until that night. Kayla's camera was still recording when she disappeared. Later, when police reviewed the footage, the last 30 seconds made every officer in the room go silent. The video showed her underwater, eyes wide, bubbles escaping her mouth. But what chilled them most was what came after. Her body floating motionless while ghostly hands reached from the dark, pulling her deeper. Then, faintly, a whisper, "You shouldn't have come here." The footage ended there. Weeks later, the police divers searched the lake but found nothing. No bodies, no clothes, no camera. Yet, at midnight, people living near the shore began hearing voices echoing from the water. Some swore they heard Kayla calling for help. Others said they saw a girl's hand rise briefly from the lake, waving weakly before sinking again. Locals stopped going near the water at night. They said the curse had awakened again, and it was hungry. That was the night Lake Lanier claimed new souls, and began to whisper once more. To be continued. The morning after Kayla's disappearance, the lake looked innocent again. Clear, quiet, and still. The rescue team searched for hours, their boats circling the same dark patch where she vanished. Nothing. No bubbles, no clothes, no sign of struggle. By noon, the sheriff called it an unfortunate accident. But deep down, everyone knew something wasn't right. That night, the town of Gainesville slept with unease. A few miles from the lake, an old fisherman named Earl sat on his porch cleaning his nets. He'd lived there all his life and had seen things others didn't believe. That lake ain't normal, he'd tell folks. You look at it too long, it looks right back. As the moon climbed high, Earl heard it again, the sound that had haunted him for years. Voices. They came from the direction of the lake, faint at first, like whispers carried by the wind. Then clearer. Earl? Come back. He froze. The voice was familiar. It sounded like his wife Clara, dead for 20 years. The lantern beside him flickered. The night grew colder, though the air was still. He tried to stand, but his knees felt weak. Then he saw it. Down by the waterline, where the moonlight touched the shore, a figure stood. Clara? He called softly. The figure didn't move. Her dress was soaked, clinging to her body. Water dripped from her hair, forming small ripples at her feet. Slowly she raised her arm and pointed toward the lake. Earl's breath caught. No, you can't be. Before he could finish, she turned and walked straight into the water. Not waiting, walking as if the water wasn't even there. The ripples vanished behind her. Earl grabbed his flashlight and ran toward the shore, but by the time he got there, the lake was calm again. Only the reflection of the moon stared back at him. He whispered shakily, "Lord help us, they're waking again." The next morning, rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the lake had taken another life during the night. Others swore they saw faces under the surface, faces of people long dead. By noon, Kayla's story was all over social media. Her missing vlog camera had washed up on shore, miraculously still working. When police opened the footage, they found something new. After Kayla disappeared, the camera had kept recording underwater. For several seconds, everything was dark. Then faint blue light began to glow from the depths, revealing what looked like rooftops, houses buried under the lake. And there, standing in the middle of it all, were people. Pale, floating people, their eyes glowing faintly, their mouths moving as if singing. The clip ended suddenly when something brushed against the lens. That same evening, 3 boys dared each other to swim in the lake after sunset. They joked, "We'll find Kayla and become famous." But only one came back. He was found hours later on the dock, shivering, eyes wide open. When the rescuers tried to question him, he couldn't speak. He only pointed at the water and whispered, "They're down there, and they're angry." Days passed. Strange accidents began happening one after another. Boats capsized without warning. Fishermen heard sobbing below the waves. Divers reported seeing buildings under the lake. Windows, doors, even street lamps still standing, covered in algae. A group of ghost hunters came to film a documentary. They set up cameras around the lake, hoping to catch something supernatural. That night, they recorded what looked like human silhouettes floating just beneath the surface. Hundreds of them, drifting in slow circles as if performing some silent ritual. One of the men, Nate, leaned over the edge to get a closer look. The water was dark, but he swore he saw eyes staring back. Then, in a sudden burst, something yanked him downward. The others screamed and reached for him, but all they pulled up was his headset, wet, cold, and broken. When they replayed the recording later, Nate's last words were faint but clear. "They're calling me by name." After that night, the mayor closed the lake to the public. "Too many accidents," he said. But the locals knew better. The curse was growing stronger. And then, one stormy night, when lightning cracked the sky, the lake began to bubble again. People living nearby heard it, the voices, louder now, echoing like 1,000 whispers in unison. "Come home, come home." At midnight, the power in the whole town went out. From the hill above the lake, you could see faint blue lights flickering beneath the water, like lanterns moving through a drowned city. And in the middle of it all, a dark shape rose slowly to the surface. Something massive. Something that had slept too long. The wind howled, the water churned, and the voices screamed. The curse of Lake Lanier had awakened fully. To be continued? The storm raged all night. Thunder rolled like growling monsters, and lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up the angry waves of Lake Lanier. The town slept uneasily, but some people, those living closest to the water, didn't sleep at all. They heard it. The sound started as a low hum. Then it grew louder, deep voices rising from beneath the surface, chanting words no one could understand. Dogs barked wildly. Lights flickered in every house facing the lake. By 2 a.m. the rain stopped suddenly. The silence that followed was worse than the storm itself. Earl, the old fisherman, stood by his window again, clutching his Bible. He could see blue lights glowing under the water like ghostly lanterns. They formed lines, rows, shapes that looked like streets and houses. The drowned town of Oscarville was shining again. He whispered, trembling, "Lord, it's come back." At that same moment, a group of police officers arrived near the dam after reports of screaming sounds. One officer, Ramirez, turned on his flashlight and pointed it at the lake. The beam cut through the mist and stopped on something that froze them all. Bodies. Hundreds of them floating just below the surface. Men, women, children, all glowing faintly blue, their eyes wide open. The lake wasn't reflecting the moonlight. The lake was glowing from within. Before the officers could react, the water around their boat began to boil. The temperature dropped sharply, their breath turning white in the air. Then a massive shadow rose beneath them, lifting their boat like a toy. "Back up! Back up!" Ramirez shouted. But before they could move, a long, pale arm shot out of the water, grabbing one officer by the vest and dragging him under in an instant. The others screamed and jumped into the freezing water, swimming for shore. Behind them, the lake churned violently, and a voice echoed across the night, louder than thunder, deeper than any human voice. "You took our home, now we take yours." By morning, word spread across the town. The police denied everything, calling it a storm accident, but people had seen too much. Some fled the area entirely, packing their cars and refusing to look back. But a few stayed behind, including a young reporter named Leah Thompson. She was determined to uncover the truth about Lake Lanier. She interviewed survivors, read old newspapers, and discovered that over 700 people had died in mysterious drownings since the lake was built. But what shocked her most was an old government file. It showed the exact spot where Kayla had vanished. Underneath that area, there had once been a church cemetery, one that was never fully moved before the flooding. Leah's hands shook as she whispered, "The dead are still down there." That night, against every warning, she went to the lake with her camera. She set it up on a tripod and pointed it toward the water. "If there's something here," she said softly, "I'll find it." At 12:17 a.m., the wind began to blow. Her equipment started to shake and faint whispers filled the air. The water rippled, then parted. From the center of the lake, something enormous rose. At first, it looked like a mound of earth, but then it kept rising, revealing what looked like a steeple. The tip of an old church, the one from Oscarville, broke through the surface, covered in algae and mud. The cross on top gleamed under the moonlight. Leah gasped. "It's real." Suddenly, a door on the steeple creaked open, even though it was underwater seconds ago. Dark water poured out, along with dozens of ghostly figures floating upward, their faces expressionless. One of them drifted toward Leah, stopping just a few feet away. It was Kayla. Her skin was pale, her hair floating like seaweed. She opened her mouth and water poured out as she whispered, "Help us, before it's too late." Leah stumbled backward, terrified. But before she could run, another hand grabbed her ankle, cold, slimy, and strong. She screamed, kicked free, and sprinted to her car. She looked back only once. The church was sinking again, but the water wasn't closing. It was boiling, moving, breathing. She drove off as fast as she could, tears in her eyes, whispering to herself, "They're alive down there, and they're coming up." The next day, the lake was eerily calm again. But fishermen reported strange sights, broken crosses, half-buried tombstones, and what looked like parts of wooden houses rising from the deep. At sunset, a little boy playing near the shore found something glimmering in the sand, a golden necklace. It was engraved with the name Kayla. When he showed it to his mother, she froze. Because faintly from the water behind them, they both heard it again. "Come home." The woman grabbed her son and ran, leaving the necklace behind as ripples spread from the spot where it lay. Something had awakened in Lake Lanier, and it wasn't going back to sleep. To be continued. The next few days were like something out of a nightmare. The people who stayed near Lake Lanier began to change. At first, it was small things, missing time, strange dreams, wet footprints on dry floors. But soon the whispers began again. Not just from the lake, from everywhere. Inside homes. In mirrors. Even through cell phones. Leah Thompson, the reporter, hadn't slept in 3 days. The footage she captured of the church rising from the lake went viral online, but the video vanished a few hours later. Deleted by unknown users. Her computer wouldn't stop glitching. Every time she tried to edit the file, she heard whispers through her headphones. "Leah, come back to us." She unplugged everything, trembling. "No. No, you're not real." Then her lights flickered and water began to drip from her ceiling, though the roof was dry. When she looked up, a pale face stared back at her from the reflection in the puddle forming on the floor. It was Kayla. Her lips moved silently, then the words echoed in Leah's head. "You shouldn't have shown them." Across town, the lake was rising, slowly, silently, like a beast taking a deep breath. Docks broke apart. Boats drifted away on their own. The water crept up over the road and into the woods, swallowing everything in its path. Earl, the old fisherman, sat by his window again, holding his Bible tight. He'd seen too many signs to ignore. When the blue glow began spreading under the trees, he whispered, "The dead ain't stayin' put this time." Then from the fog outside he heard his wife's voice again. "Earl, open the door." He froze. The voice was sweet, calm, just like he remembered it from decades ago. "Earl, it's me." Tears filled his eyes. "You can't be her," he said shakily. "You died." The doorknob rattled. Then again. Harder. "Earl, let me in." He backed away, whispering prayers under his breath. The knocking stopped. Silence. He sighed in relief, until he heard a whisper directly behind him. "I already am." He turned slowly, heart pounding,